So, friends, today and next week, just a little two-part series on doctrine. This is not exhaustive teaching, but it's certainly you'll have a good idea of stewardship beyond today. And then next week is the doctrine of last things. Just some ideas, some thoughts around that. So today we've got stewardship. I love this picture, don't you? The idea of kind of God's hand holding the earth in his hands. Remember that little song we used to sing? He's got the whole world. He's got the... That's great doctrine, isn't it? Isn't it just magnificent? And it goes down and it talks about creation. It talks about the fish in the sea and the birds of the air. And it talks about he's got a gambling man in his hands. He's got a sinner like me in his hands. He's got the whole world. He's got the mums and dads. You can add it all. I remember us doing that and thinking he's got the little bitsy baby in his hands. He's got you and me, brother. And that's stewardship. That's the idea that this great big God has got the whole world in his hands. Isn't he an amazing God? So friends, here's point 101 right at the top of stewardship is that stewardship begins and ends with God. It begins with God and it ends with God. And we're somewhere in between. But it begins with God and it ends with him. Then God said, let us, that's the Trinity, make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish of the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and the wild animals and over all the creatures that move. So that's 126. And that just comes after that whole series of God said, and God said, and God said, and God said. And there's this creation that happens. And then if you look at it right to the end, and God saw all. So all he saw includes the stewardship mandate. So the stewardship mandate comes right there from Genesis 1. It includes that. So he saw that was good as well. And all he did made, and it was very good. And there was evening and there was morning. I just love this worshipful rhythm there is in the beginning of this creation story. So God stewards then, that would be you and I, and people that have lived throughout the ages. There's a couple of points. Let's just tease it out of that first text. God stewards have this capacity to act responsibly, and there should be think in there, and think intelligently. That's because we've been made in his image. We are image bearers of God, so we're able to act responsibly and think intelligently because he has shared his authority with us. He has shared his authority with his creation. Capacity to act and to think. So Pat Fields was telling me this morning that Sia Kolisi went this morning to Grey where he was a laddie in the hostel, and he woke up the hostel boys. How about that? They might have thought he wasn't acting responsibly, but I think they would have loved it. Imagine waking up and there's Sia in your dormitory. So this capacity. Could you say amen to that, friends? We're to be stewards. He's given us. We remember Laurie Stewart when she taught up here. She said we're the only ones in the universe. The animals can't do this, but we're the ones who can think about what we think about. Amazing. So the animals can't do that, but we can. So we're these stewards. And then, secondly, about stewards on that text, there is this amazing thing that God has delegated his authority. But it's always a delegated authority with accountability. He did that with the heavenly hosts. He's done that with the angels. Some of the angels discovered his accountability when they started doing their own thing. And the reality is for you and I, it's a delegated authority, but it's always with accountability. And we're, of course, accountable to him. And that comes from that text. It's to rule over. It's to rule over. It's that idea of delegated authority. It's amazing to think that the God of the universe entrusts this earth into our care. Just amazing. And that's to inspire us to think, wow, I'm a steward of his creation. And so, the livestock, and we're free. We're intelligent beings. We can make decisions, but we're always accountable to God and actually to one another. So we're to honor him. We're to respect him. The one who chose to share his authority with us. And the text goes on, that last little part, that he blessed them. And so God blessed them, and he gives his creation over to us to care for it with, which is just absolutely amazing. So, of course, we are blessed to be a blessing. Verse 28, God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful. So in this idea of stewardship, it's a lot more than a duty, friends. It's a blessing. God bless them. That's the whole idea. We've been blessed to be a blessing. So stewards have real authority, but God has final authority. This is over the material world. You have ownership. It's okay to have ownership. You can own a sticky grond. You can have a house if you're privileged. You can have a car. But it's temporary, isn't it? And it's transient. You know, if you own a home or you've got some property, or I know the title deeds of this church are down in Cape Town in the deeds office. I think Professor Cravenstein would attest to that. That's what happens. Oh, sorry. It's changed. Thank you, Ron. Is that where they are now? So you can think of it that way. So you might have your name on your bit of ownership or your little bit of whatever, but the title deeds are in heaven. He's the ultimate owner of everything we have. And so we're stewards. I mean, Erasmus, how did it change? A little bit of rugby. How did he manage to change the ethos of the team? How did they? I mean, in the interviews afterwards, how did you run this campaign, Rassie? How did you do things? Well, when the pressure was getting to the guys, and he said to him, "No pressure. You know, rugby's a game. The pressure shouldn't depress you and give you around." He started talking about, "No, we're blessed, and it's a privilege to bring hope to the nation." They started thinking differently and playing differently. And that's what should happen to you and I. That it's a privilege. It's a blessing. You still with me, friends? You still there? So this amazing gift of stewardship. So when you swing over to the New Testament, there's this, now how would you like to pronounce this? Any Greek scholars here? Hey? Dabba, what was that? Oikonomos, I think. Greek house manager, steward. It carries this whole idea from Genesis 1, going right through the Old Testament, that the whole world is his. You've got those Psalms that speak about the house of the Lord, and we're looking, build the house and build the church and build the world, and God is the owner, and we're part of it. Which is just kind of mess. So these house managers, or these stewards, this is the term, we're stewards of his creation, must exercise responsible stewardship over, how you want to pronounce it? Oikonomia, which is where we get our word economy from. It's all God's idea. And where must we do it? Within the church or the oikos. Isn't it amazing? So God's idea, his world, and you begin to see this beyond the drudgery of life and so on, you're a steward of God's. You start looking at your spouse differently or your friends differently. Oh my goodness, this is a created being made in the image of God. I'm a steward in my marriage. I'm a steward in the church. I'm a part of his creation. Started looking at the world differently. So definitely stewardship. Point number 2, stewardship is shaped by our worldview. And this is going to determine whether you're going to be a joyful steward, a happy steward, or if you're just going to be a down and drudgery person. I'm going nowhere slowly, baby, you know. Or, no, I'm created. God said, let us make Murray or Derek or you in his image. And you have this God-given design in your life to live for him. Your work looks different. I'm a steward in the workplace. Wow. Of my voice, Robin, that God's given me. Hey? That wasn't in my notes, by the way. So the Son, Jesus, is the image of the. But look at this text, friend. Colossians, God, the firstborn over all creation. It's magnificent. For in him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities. All things have been created through him, for him. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. Wow! That's Jesus. That's Jesus, the Trinity, right there, before Genesis 1. So help me, friends, how old is God? You know, how old is God? Is he 1,000 years old? Is he 1,000,000 years old? Is he 1,000,000,000 years old? Is he 1,000,000,000,000 years old? How old is God? God exists outside of time. He's timeless. This is the God who has given us his authority in our lives. It's amazing to think. And this is Jesus, the Son, who came down. God, the eternal God. Jesus came as flesh and blood to live and walk and show us who God is. It's amazing. So all things hold together. So he's before all things. He's timeless. He is, here it is, friends. It's all things in that text. And that includes you and I. Includes your world. Includes our struggling South Africa, trying to find its worth and identity and who we are together as His people. All things, friends. That's why Paul can say, and He'll work all things together for the good of those who love Him or called according to His purpose. All things. It's the same idea. You getting this a little bit, friends? I'm hoping to excite you today. But yay! Hoping to give you a sense that it's bigger and beyond, and it's God who's made us for His purpose. He holds all things together. So I think it was last year, Shawls and I had the opportunity to shoot across overseas, and Caitlin, our daughter, you remember, and she loved the stage, did Katie? She tends to come alive on the stage. Pearson School drama, that was her thing. And so we're overseas, and we're with her in London, and she's arranged this special treat for us. And when she was down here at Pearson, they did a production of Fawlty Towers. Now, do you remember Fawlty Towers? So it's a sitcom, British sitcom. Some of you might know it. It's British humor, and it's this little hotel-y place, and there's funny characters in it, and there's Manuel, and there's miscommunication, and there's Sybil, who's Mr. Fawlty's wife, and there's arguing, but it's just humorous and funny. Anyway, she was Mrs. Richardson, the old lady. Our daughter morphed into this old lady on the stage, so much so that her younger brother, Andrew, said, I think it was during halftime, interval, or at the end, said, Mom, Mrs. Richardson was really irritating me. And she was this old lady who lost her kit and refused to wear her glasses and put in her hearing aid and irritated everyone in the whole hotel. So our daughter became somebody else. But when we were in London, she's arranged this thing. And so what she'd done, she'd booked a Fawlty Towers live production. You sat down at a meal. Now, why I'm telling the story is because the actors, the Fawlty Towers actors, were the waiters at this meal, you see. So they stayed within their characters as waiters. So they did everything they do in the production. False teeth fell in the soup. Manuel threw bread down on the table. He just threw it down on the table. And Mr. Fawlty was as rude as he always is, just barging in. And his wife, Sybil, was cross with him most of the time. And at our table, Mr. Fawlty was under our table at one stage. The story is going somewhere. And then so Sybil, who's his wife, comes in, and Caitlin, our daughter, is there. And so just in front of everybody, Sybil starts accusing Caitlin, our daughter, of flirting with Mr. Fawlty. And so, but this is all acting. This is just, And so she glares at Caitlin. And she stays within her character. She doesn't budge. She just glares at her until Caitlin's glowing and blushing and feeling highly embarrassed. So I don't think they were good stewards, friends. People made food in the kitchen and they abused it at our tables in the name of art. So stewardship is shaped by our worldview. And if we believe that Jesus is at the center of our world, holding our world together, the cosmos, holding it together, I think we should live differently. So think about it. Here is up on the screen. Less what? Less what? If Jesus is at the center of your world and my world, less what? Less of me? Sure. Less worrying. Less worrying, friends. Less worrying. More what? More peace? Yeah. I think more living for Jesus. I really do. If He holds the whole world in His hands. So understanding stewardship shapes every relationship that we have. So our relationship to God, our relationship to one another, the church, our relationship to ownership, what we own, what we work for, our lifestyle, our assets, your pension, everything. The money, we earn, how we spend it, all material things. Do you think so, friends? Am I on track here? Is this part of the doctrine of stewardship? The understanding the church has held throughout the ages. So there are some very clear teachings in the New Testament about stewardship. Very, very clear teachings. So, tell me. So here's the text, 1 Timothy 5, verse 4. But if a widow has children or grandchildren, these should learn first of all to put their religion into practice by caring for their own family and so repaying their parents and grandparents, for this is pleasing to God. So it begins with care for our, what could we put in there? Care for our family. Absolutely, your family is important. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's definitely part of stewardship. So let's read this one. So this is Luke 10, verse 34. So who's he speaking about in this text? He went to him, you know the story, he went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. Who's the story about? The Good Samaritan, hey? And he, by the way, is a foreigner. So a foreigner comes to teach Israel how to live for God. So we should help those in need. Yes, ma'am. We should help those in need. We should look after our families. We should help those in need. Here's the next one, 1 Corinthians 16, verse 1 to 2. Now about the collection for the Lord's people. Do what I told the Galatian churches to do on the first day of every week. Each one of you should set aside a sum of money in keeping with your income. You can call this proportionate giving if you'd like. Saving it up so that when I come, no collections will have to be made. So we should support the work of the local gemeente. Hey? The local church. So you should look after your family. You should look after the needy. We should look after our local church. And Marissa said, oh, amen, preach it, brother. Ek het my job nodig. No, so, but it doesn't stop there. This is the doctrine of stewardship, friends. So this embraces our stewardship reality of life. That's part of it. And then what's the last one? Well, Romans 10, verse 15. And how can anyone preach unless they are sent, as it is written? How beautiful are the feet of those who bring good news. So we should support the work of global mission. And none of those are going to go away, friends. That's why we're calling this the doctrine of stewardship. That's not going to change. The New Testament's not going to change. I can't just suddenly say, oh, it's only about my family. Or I can't say, oh, it's only about the local church. Or it's only about the needy. Or it's only about global mission. No, it's a package deal. Could we say amen to that, friends? That is worth saying intimately. So, moving on. So we're drawing into the last little part of our chat this morning. So, a giving God expects giving people. A giving God expects giving people. And that is there throughout the Old and the New Testament. God is a giving being. Psalm 65, verse 12. Isn't it just magnificent? This is what we sang about. Magnificent, matchless, marvelous love. God. The grasslands of the wilderness overflow. The hills are clothed with gladness. Is this not our God, friends? Hasn't He done this for us? The wilderness of your soul, the wilderness of our nation, the wilderness of life. Isn't that what He's done? That's what He does. Psalm 78, verse 52. But He brought His people out like a flock. He led them like sheep through the wilderness. Only God can do that. And that's who He is. And so because He's a giving God, and He expects His people to follow His example, so His people must follow His example. Here it is, way back in the Old Testament, Deuteronomy 15, verse 10. Give generously, and He's speaking about the needy here, give generously to them, to the needy, and do so without a grudging heart. Then because of this, the Lord your God will bless you in all your work and in everything you put your hand to. And I can tell you, people who I've walked with in missions over the years, and I've been doing it for many years, friends, their own lives. Andre will tell you, as you walk in amongst the poor, as you try and engage change for the longer term, your own life will be blessed. I can remember when we started out going to Walmer Township with some very white ladies from this community, probably 18 years ago, and saying, Murray, I'm not going near Walmer Township. And over time, when we handed over to the local church, I remember those white ladies crying and hugging these black gogos and these people. And relationships had been born, and just amazing, friends. Just absolutely amazing. So, there it is, and Psalm 112, verse 5. Good will come to those who are generous and lend freely, who conduct their affairs with justice. Finally, friends, we have the self-giving God. We know this text, John 3, verse 16. For God so loved the world that he gave. That he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have eternal life. This perfect God, this Jesus who had no sin. So we'll finish with this picture which for me captures the gospel. The empty tomb and the cross. And I don't know if you can see yourself, but I can always see myself as a criminal there on the side, needing grace. Do you want motivation to be a good steward, friends? You look at the cross, what Jesus has done for our lives. And so it's way more than a duty. It's a privilege. It's a joy. It's a blessing. And so, Father, in these quiet moments, as we consider our lives before a holy God, that you are a generous God. And friends, how he has blessed us with his grace. He has given us the very best of himself. Think about it, friends, in the quiet of your heart. What did it cost Jesus to have the whole world in his hands? To hold your life and my life in his hands. To open salvation's door for eternity for us. It cost him his life. It cost him separation from the Father's love on the cross. The burden of our sin. And so I tell you what, friends, if you're a grumpy steward here today, think about that. If you're a reluctant steward, think about that. If you're battling with stewardship, think about his love for you today. For God so loved you that he gave his one and only Son, that you can put your name in there, believes in him, will not perish. That means you won't come under the wrath and the judgment of God that we deserve. Jesus comes under that wrath and judgment on our behalf. And so, Father, we pray that we would be those who respond to your grace in our homes, amongst the poor and the needy, in this church, and in global mission. For we know there are many who do not know you yet, Lord. And you're waiting with your return so that they may come to know you. And we pray that we would be part of that movement of sharing the love of Jesus with our neighbors and our work colleagues and our family and the whole world. Because he's got the whole world in his hands. Let's stand together, friends.